the scandal as well.
It's non-fiction.
Yeah. The main guy. So he's obviously defiant, and he obviously still wants to own the narrative on his involvement in 1MDB. He's denied any wrongdoings as well. And he's lashed out at the book, saying it's a guilt by lifestyle, trial by media at its worst. What do you think is going on here?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any guilt by lifestyle. I think, if anything, we glamorize his lifestyle a little bit, right? We tried not to be... In fact, Bradley, on one of the first drafts, he said, look, Tom, I think we're being too hectoring about Jho Low here. I think we should let him be like this interesting character. Instead of judging him, we try not to judge him, right? Obviously, the guy's done something incredible. I mean, you couldn't do it, I couldn't do it, right? I mean, graduate college, never get a job, go out to the Middle East on a semester off college, get to know Yusuf Otaiba, the future ambassador of the US, get him to introduce you to Middle Eastern money, get that money to invest in Malaysia, become close to the Malaysian Prime Minister, get him to let you run a sovereign wealth fund from behind the scenes, persuade Goldman to raise $6.5 billion for that fund, steal half of it, get to know Leonardo DiCaprio, Miranda Kerr.
We get the picture.
Right? And then go on the run in China. Until today, you know, persuade Chinese state-owned companies to do dodgy deals in Malaysia, and by doing so, create yourself a place you can hide out. And so he's just an amazing character.
So why we've had banks shuttered, we've had a prime minister who's lost his job, we've had a long-ruling government that's collapsed, we've got bankers who've been convicted and charged here in Singapore, but he's still in hiding. How do we process that? The mastermind of this whole money flow, still none.
Because I think he's a master of not giving in, right? And you know, Nick Carraway says of Gatsby in The Great Gatsby, he's the most optimistic person I ever knew. Or I'm paraphrasing, right? You're laughing, but Jho Low is like an optimistic person, right? He's somebody who, you know, you or I would have given up 3 years ago when our name was in the newspaper. Okay, fine, I'll go to jail for a bit, right? Or that. But he is continuing to. And he makes allies. He's an amazing networker, right? So he's gotten to know all the... It's in here in the China connection chapter, where he goes to China and gets to know the CEOs of these big companies, after all the stories have come out about him, and gets them to do these deals in Malaysia, right? So he's created himself, as I just said, by having those connections, he knows things about, I'm imagining, about CEOs of these companies. And that's why China is not sending him back to Malaysia, right? For example, we knew we had eyes on Jho Low until mid-July, and he was living in the Pacific Place apartments in Hong Kong, and he was living in Macau in the Marriott Hotel. And you know, the Hong Kong police were not doing anything. Singapore, as you all know, had issued an arrest, Interpol red notice to him in 2016, and Hong Kong did nothing, right? So obviously he's got connections that is protecting him in China. The question now is, how long, you know? And he's been reading this biography of Mark Rich, who was this American financier who lived for years in Switzerland after getting charged in the US, and Clinton pardoned him. But that's a role model for him. He lived on Lake Luzerne, Mark Rich did, so had a nice life.
He really knows how to pick them. Yeah. Did you ever meet him? Did you ever come close to seeing him?
No, I never met Jho Low.
No. Before I open the questions out to the floor, I want to ask you a question about Singapore. This is where we saw the first legal case involving 1MDB unfold as early as February 2016, when Najib and company, including senior management of 1MDB in Malaysia, was saying everything's fine. There is no money missing. We've got it all covered. And Singapore's convicted at least 6 people, mostly private bankers, and they charged 2 banks, and they find their own banks there too. So how do you see Singapore in the scheme of the whole thing?
I think Singapore comes out of this looking quite proactive. You know, you can argue about, okay, Yak Yu Chi, you know, kept quite a lot of his bonuses, right, from BSI, or didn't do that long in jail, whatever it is. But you know, people face consequences here. And they put out an arrest warrant for Jho Low They did it quietly. Obviously there was political considerations of the relationship between Singapore and Malaysia that had taken into consideration, right? But I think, yeah, overall Singapore's, I mean, what's Switzerland done?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Switzerland will do something, and it's unfair to judge them now, but Singapore definitely looks like it's got ahead of the curve.
No one's actually charged, convicted anyone apart from Singapore, have they?
Correct. Singapore is the only place in the world that has charged anyone in connection with 1MDB, and sentenced. Sorry, because Malaysia has now charged Jho Low,
Right.
and has charged Najib, right? But Singapore's the only place that sentenced people, and I think it was just a practical thing. They wanted to move on, put it behind them. But it's very good to me.
So I'm going to open the questions to the floor if anyone's got stuff to ask, and pick Tom's brain. Just tell me your name, tell us your name and where you're from. Thank you.
Just waving.
That's all.
I'm Tom. Yeah, from New York. Obviously, it didn't turn out well for the banks, underwriters. Your personal opinion, do you think they have done reasonable amount of work, or were they a victim themselves? That's the first question. The second question is, how are they going to pay back the money? I don't know, is it 10-year bond, 20-year bond? How are they going to pay the money back?
Good questions. Do you want to just hold on to that, or we can pass it to talk about Goldman Sachs. When you said banks, you mean Goldman Sachs?
I didn't want to name them.
Okay. Goldman Sachs, so what's happening now in the US is the Department of Justice is investigating Goldman Sachs, and the securities regulators are investigating Goldman Sachs. I think that for sure Goldman Sachs looks like it's going to be fined under the Bank Secrecy Act, which is a 1970 act under which banks have to ensure that they don't miss red flags. So if you're a bank, you have to have a compliance department which stops money laundering, right? And there were huge red flags in this case. 1MDB at one point asked Goldman to deposit $3 billion from a bond into a Swiss bank account, into BSI, right? The bank the bank that went to jail in Singapore. That doesn't make any sense. Why would a sovereign wealth fund have a Swiss bank account, right? Swiss bank accounts are for where you don't want to pay the tax, right? You have a Swiss bank account. So 1MDB should have just had a bank account with a bank in Malaysia, probably a state-owned bank, seeing as it was a sovereign wealth fund. And Linklaters, there was a lawyer for Linklaters based in Singapore who was on the deal, and he told Goldman he probably shouldn't be depositing that money into the Swiss bank. But Goldman's defense was, well, that this bank was not on any money laundering list. Other things, there was the president of Goldman in Asia, a guy called David Ryan. He said we shouldn't be doing this business, right? Because this fund made no sense. It had executives who didn't know what they were doing. It didn't have a business plan. There was no reason for it to exist because there's already Khazanah, right? And he was overruled by Gary Cohn, the president, who went on to become Trump's economic advisor. And so that's the red flag thing, and they could pay a fine for that, a big fine in the billions of dollars. There's also a criminal investigation into Goldman, and that's into Tim Leissner, who was barred from working in Singapore, right, by the regulators here. And the question about Leissner is, what did he know, right? He was a friend of Jho Low's, very close to him. What did he know about what was going on? And since leaving Goldman in 2016, Leissner helped Jho Low to buy a bank in Mauritius. He actually ended up leaving because he falsely stated to a bank in Luxembourg that Goldman had done due diligence on Leissner, on Jho Low. So those are the kind of questions. Getting the money back? I think the Attorney General of Malaysia is considering suing Goldman in America to get the money back. And then, of course, the Americans have seized all these assets, right? They've seized all of the assets that Jho Low and others bought with the stolen money, from the rights to the movie company, to the mansions, to the... And when they sell those, this is still ongoing, right? This case, when they sell those, the money should flow back to Malaysia, right? That's the reason to do it. They'll take their costs out that it costs them to do it, the Department of Justice, and then they'll give them back to Malaysia.
Hi, I'm Matthew from Singapore. So, Tom, if you met Jho Low one day, what would you say to him?
Congratulations.
Somebody asked me that in Malaysia, and I said, why did you do it? But I would only give the same answer twice. I mean, the thing that I don't understand about Jho Low is why didn't he stop, right? Or, well, he was a very smart guy. He could have had he's an amazing networker. He would have had a very fine career in finance, right? But the really crazy thing is he's got all this money, right? But he never tries to fill the hole. He never tries to make it a sustainable fraud. So there's this scene at the very end of the book where people in Malaysia are starting to clamor for the money back, right? They're saying, oh, you've got to bring that money back from the Caymans. Where's all the money gone, right? And they one MDB takes out a loan from Deutsche Bank. And they should have used that money to fill the other money that had gone missing, right? They could have started to try to fill it. That's how pyramid schemes also work, right? Like Bernie Madoff's. But Jho Low didn't do that. He used it to buy the Equanimity, a $250 million yacht, right? So what kind of man, the tolerance for risk is insane, right? You know? And that's shown in many of the gambling scenes, right? He just goes and drops, crazy amounts of money. That's why it's called $1 Billion Whale. This is the biggest. This guy single-handedly resurrected nightclub empires. Sorry, can I just do an aside on the casinos? There's a group in here called the Strategic Group. So they own some of the top nightclubs in the U.S. Marquee in New York, Lavo in Las Vegas. Jessica's probably been too. And these guys were suffering after the financial crisis because all the Wall Street bankers were bonuses had been pulled and they weren't going and doing bottle service in these nightclubs. And Jho Low turns up, and he's got like all the money in the world. It'd be Wednesday night, and he'd drop like $1 million, right? And he'd just go, and this is the crazy part of the book. He would touch people's lives. You know, you could meet him on the Vegas floor, and he would give you, tens of thousands of dollars in gambling chips. And there were people who went from poor to rich because they just bumped up against him in one night. And that's the theme of the book, right? He does that writ large with Goldman, with all the people he meets. So.
And that's how he won the loyalty of a lot of his friends as well. He took care of them. The Aaron Huntington and many of them.
Yes, right? And she's saying that these coterie of people he has around him have stayed loyal, actually. Right? There's Fat Eric.
Yeah.
Who Jho Low calls Fat Eric. And yeah, Jasmine Liu and others. Yeah. So we don't know where any of these people are, right? Supposedly they're in China, I'd imagine.
Yeah, sorry, halfway reading your book and absolutely loving every page. But I want to ask you your motivations behind writing this book, besides making a shitload of money, which I'm sure you are. Sorry to be quick.
No.
Are you driven by any other purpose, like a passion for exposing corrupt leaders or governments, or anything other than commercial?
It's a really great question. I'd like to state, for the record, my advance just about covered my unpaid leave from my newspaper, living in Hong Kong, where rents are very expensive. No, but yeah, I'm not.
Make money on the movie though.
Potentially, if it ever gets made. Yeah, I don't think journalists are. I mean, it's not bullshit. Journalists are not driven by monetary considerations, right? I mean, otherwise you just wouldn't do it. But I also wasn't driven by any desire to change the government in Malaysia or have a social impact, or, to be honest, I mean, I don't, I think, the Sarawak report, which broke loads of stories on this, I think Claire is very driven by those things. And she broke the first stories on this. Me, I was driven by this amazing tale of this guy. And I've become it's like a worm in my head, trying to understand Jho Low. Because you talk to people, and they'd say, I mean, you've probably had this, right? You talk to people, and they say, oh, well, he's a nice guy. Yeah, he's a really nice guy. Anything else about him? Ah, great guy, yeah, He'd ask you what you wanted. Do you want a drink? Can I get you this? Can I get you that? But nobody really had anything to say about him. It was only when we really dug down, and we talked to someone who worked for him, right? He by the way, even now, he has foreign pediatricians. He's got 2 kids looking after his kids. He's got this company called Concierge in London that is flying in all these staff for him, even though he's on the run, right? And as we got to know some of those people that worked for him, then you get like the real Jho Low, right? The guy who buys 10 pairs of shoes of the same color in the same shop at the same time, and then wears old clothes, right, with holes in them because he's comfortable in them. So, you know, maybe he's on the autism spectrum. I don't know, right? There's no, I mean, not joking, and I'm not making light of that. But I mean, there's something fascinating about him, and I think we tried to scratch at it, but it's very difficult, right? Because you don't have access to him, and this is only, there are probably other people who wrote other books about this guy, because I think he's really, really fascinating. So that's what drives me.
Hi, Mr. Wright. My name is Dominic, and I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I don't know if I speak for a lot of Malaysians here today, but I would say, first of all, you're a hero. You are a hero. Thank you so much. I mean, you know, Malaysia's mentioned a lot. I mean, in a way, it's very sad because the country's almost, its name is being dragged through the mud. Reputational damage. But I think what I wanted to ask today was, you know, recently people like Nurul Rubini has been talking about how there could be a financial crisis coming up in 2020. And as I finished the book within 3 hours, that's how gripping it was. Yeah, just one night, just read everything, digested everything. I get the feeling that a lot of the tri-sector motivation was greed. The underlying theme in this book was greed. And I felt that it happened after the financial crisis. I felt that from there, a lot of people were, like you said, were eager for money, for finance, or whatever. So do you believe there will be a potential another whale after 2020, or even something coming up soon? And I think my second question is more of, when is the film coming out, and what will be the title? May I suggest it to be The Whale of Wall Street? Thank you very much.
You heard it here first. You're taking a cut on that one? 1%. I think it's a great question about, like, I feel that what's happened in our, without being too, like I said, not moralistic. First of all, thank you. I don't feel like we had any role in what happened in Malaysia. I really feel like that's Malaysia's business and Malaysian voters and everything. This is a story. Yeah, I feel like I've lost my train of thought. What was the question? I've been doing this for like 2 weeks already.
So what I wanted to ask was, do you foresee another whale as big as this?
Yeah, okay, sorry, that's what I was going to say. I feel like there's so much money sloshing around in the global economy because interest rates are so low, right? And that's the context for this book, right? That after the financial crisis, the monetary authorities are sort of juicing the economy. So when 1MDB went out and said, I want to raise these $6.5 billion in bonds with Goldman's help, they did it at a drop of a hat, right? They had fairly good yields, and there's huge investor demand, right, for these bonds. And you know, there are sovereign wealth funds today control more money than private equity and hedge funds put together, right? About $7 trillion in assets. And a lot of the new ones are run in places which don't have great corporate governance standards, right? And that 1MDB would fall into that, right? So it's almost like, and in the book, there's all these Middle Eastern, you can see all this Arab money there that's just basically like used like personal wealth by Kadam Al-Khabaisi, who's the guy who runs the fund that helps Jho Low to steal money. And all the foreign banks are sort of interacting with them, right? And making fees off them, and that was called monetized estate inside Goldman. So I kind of feel like there's this world where, you know, there's huge amounts of money flowing around, and people expect their salaries and their bonuses to be so huge, right? And that kind of locks the way morally a little bit, maybe. Yeah. Get some people at the back, maybe. I don't want to give it to Rick.
I'm Kenny from Penang, Malaysia. My question is to build on one of the questions that some of them asked about your motivation. were your life put into threat, and does somebody give you a hard time following this trail? I'm sure that people will be threatening you, will trying to bring you down when writing all these books. And what's the motivation of going? Why didn't you give up?
You know, I don't want to overstate like any danger that I was in, right? I think I used to be the Pakistan correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, and I think that my wife would say that was a lot more threatening, right? Because, you know, we had somebody killed there, and my Facebook got hacked from Abu Dhabi the other day, right? And I had to change my password. I survived. No, I mean I don't think it's very dangerous. I mean, the motivation is that I think it's a really interesting story, and I also just think you need journalists to uncover this stuff, right? Anita was also, you know, a big part of covering this for the Business Times. She broke many stories. Actually, at one point, I got hold of emails in which the protagonists, the perpetrators, are discussing her stories. It's hilarious. The Cayman Islands. She'd outed the name of the company that helped to funnel some money, this Bridge Finance, if you follow it closely. And they're saying, where did Anita get that from? This is really great. So it's just, you feel good when you're a journalist. That gives you that's your kick, right? Right? I have emails where Jho Low is discussing with Otaiba and others about our coverage, right? From 2015, and we get the emails from 2015. We got them in 17 about our coverage, and it's good to fuck with people. You know, we need to shine lights onto this, because otherwise people just can, the financiers can just continue to operate in the shadows. We're old colleagues, by the way.
We are old colleagues, and because we are old colleagues, I'm happy to confirm that your point here, this was not done for the money. This was done because you got a terrific story, and you told it so well. You told it extremely well, and you wanted to, that was your professional commitment to it. My brief question is, Tom, what is your hunch? 10 or 15 years from now, will Jho Low still be a fugitive from justice? Long after the movie's made, Jho Low will still be a fugitive from justice, or he will see his day in court.
So Bradley and I had a $50 bet before publication in the US, which was last Tuesday, that he would be arrested in Malaysia, brought back from China and arrested. So can you guess which side of the bet I took?
You bet that it wouldn't happen.
No, I bet he would. Bradley's the sort of the real guy. He's the realist. I don't know, the Malaysian...
I'll take 100 against...
You take 100 on what, a year? A year? I don't know, the Malaysians, government folk we're talking to, seem very optimistic that the Chinese are going to send him back fairly soon. They say that the Chinese have intelligence eyes on him and know where he is at any one moment, and that they promised to send him back to Malaysia to face trial. I mean, he's been charged in absentia.
So we can actually see that happen by end year. We could see the picture of Jho being nabbed, being shot in a Malaysian court by end year.
I mean, the only way that this would be wrong is if somehow the Chinese are lying to the Malaysian government, or the Malaysian government are lying to me. But it seems inconceivable to me that he's going to be able to continue to stay in China forever. He has 2 Interpol red notices, including one from Singapore. He's a subject of a book, right? A couple of books. I don't know.
And the Americans haven't started. They haven't charged him.
In America?
Yeah.
No, so what's going on in America? They have a criminal case that's ongoing, and I don't know whether they're focusing on Jho Low. It may be that they focus on Goldman, because if there's already arrest warrants for obviously Najib is being tried in Malaysia, and that will start in February, and Jho Low, I imagine that would also happen but they're cooperating. The Americans will definitely cooperate with the Malaysians, but I imagine he'll be charged in Malaysia.
Alright, we'll just take one more question from this side, the man in black.
Hi Tom, just 2 very quick questions. In the movie, do you want to be played by Benedict Cumberbatch? Are you? Second question. Are you going to follow up with a sequel to your book about Donald Trump?
Oh, my wife's going to hate you because people have been saying I look like Benedict Cumberbatch for years. This guy, these people. And she thinks he looks like, well, no, I won't say it. I am quite, I do look a bit white and thin. Yeah. I mean, joking aside, I just don't think I'll be in a movie. If you read our book, it's not really about us, right? I mean, it's about the characters in it. And we're like a very minor part of it, but it's about Jho Low, it's about Najib and Rosmer, it's about the Edge, and who played a huge role, right? It's about Claire at the Sarawak Report. It's about all these folk who played a big role in it, and we're in it too. But I don't think I wouldn't imagine I'd be played by an A-lister. I'd probably be played by one of those character actors you don't recognize. You recognize, you don't know their names, right? So.
Seriously, thought we should write a sequel for MO1.
MO1. Oh God, I can't even consider doing a sequel. The things turned me inside out.
Okay, I think just two or three more questions from this side.
Hi Tom, my name is Jin. So I have two questions for you. The first one is regarding the details of the scenes in your book. So for example, you wrote about how some Muslim officials drank juices instead of alcohol. But how do you know all these things? And also, secondly, regarding your sources, when you approach them, how do you get them to trust you? And also, do you ever worry that you might just accidentally reveal who they are through maybe a slip up?
Okay. About the details in the scenes, we have an author's note. We didn't go with notes at the back of the book, but we have an author's note which says, look, we talked to over 100 people, multiple documents. It's incredibly painstaking, and it drove me insane. But that was basically how you have to talk to two people who are at any event, get them to tell you what happened. You're referring to a meeting in the Deputy Prime Minister's residence where a bunch of Arab business people have come over to do a deal for the Johor development across the border here, and they don't serve alcohol because Khaldun of this guy called Khaldun is there, and he's a very senior Arab businessman. I mean, we talk to people who are there, right? And that's how we know Rosmer sang karaoke at that event. But our source, who's probably in the room here, didn't remember what karaoke song she sang, so we didn't have that level of detail, right? So you're always pressing people, and you actually really get to irritate people, right? Because were you there? Were you there? Oh God! So if I'd met him, it would say in the book that she sang My Way. So you have to just meet people and know, and keep bugging them, saying, "Can you remember a bit more? Can you do like 10 interviews with one person?" But that's what's so hard about doing a book over a newspaper article. And people's recollections are different, right? So for example, we have a scene in there where Jho Low's stolen the money, and he wants to get close to Leonardo DiCaprio, so he gets 22 Playboy playmates to go in a suite in Vegas. And it's his way of trying to get close to Leonardo DiCaprio because he wants to make films with him. So we got hold of Jho Low set up a film company with the stolen money, right? We got hold of that film company's emails. And in the emails, it had all the contacts of everyone from the film company. So it had Leonardo DiCaprio's phone number. It had, Paris Hilton's phone number. It had everyone's phone numbers. And it had the phone numbers of all these Playboy playmates. So we called them all up. And we got two of them to talk, right? And that's how we have that scene called An Evening with the Playmates.
Do you pay them?
Huh?
Do you pay them?
No, we would never do that. That's
It's not right. It's not ethical.
No, exactly. The journal would never pay for information.
Have you ever caught DiCaprio? Leonardo DiCaprio? Have you ever caught him?
We interacted with his counsel, with his lawyer. No, they answered questions about what we found out. And that's how you build up scenes. It's painstaking work and fun when you get it, right? And the second question was, you spend time drinking wine with them, and
look like this.
Huh? Look like you're trustworthy. Yeah, I don't know. I think the Wall Street Journal has a great track record of, telling the truth and not exposing its sources. But it's a good question because we have a lot of unnamed sources in the book, like probably more unnamed than named, right? And you just have to make them realize that they're not. You're not going to screw them, right? And that you're not in it for a quick buck or to do a story the next day. A lot of journalists get a bad name for the profession by doing story. You know, you talk to me and I kind of do a quick story, quick hit, and gets you in trouble or something. So try to have a longer time frame.
Okay, so we have one last question, perhaps from a lady who wants to speak to Benedict.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm from Hong Kong, and I used to be a lowly paid journalist. Then I went to banking. I'm now in compliance, and my question is on banking. Do you think there's a systemic failure in AML, bribery, checks, or is there too much work, or why do you think those red flags were missed?
You know, bankers say that, oh, you know, you're naive. There's actually a lot of compliance right now, and compliance is even so bad, it's stopping deal making, right? It's stopping deal making. But that might be because I'm no expert on AML or anti-money laundering provisions, but I can't see, in my small window of writing this story, there was no compliance, okay? Literally, I can't find any example of anyone. So it's either that if you're moving hundreds of millions of dollars and making so much money for banks, the compliance sort of goes away, or it could be an anomaly, or, you know, I hesitate to draw larger lessons, but for sure, the global financial system enabled Jho Low. This is not just a story about Malaysia being a corrupt place, right? It's a story about Malaysia being a place where, you know, other people made a lot of money, right? And from the Swiss bank that was based here, right, to Goldman, to the auditors, right? Deloitte Touche audited these accounts in 1MDB's accounts, and the head of Deloitte Touche in Malaysia offered to do PR for 1MDB. So that just isn't how it works, right? And the problem is all these people that are supposed to be doing compliance are also getting paid by the person they're doing compliance on. So, I mean, you know, you're in compliance. Maybe some banks are doing a good job, or maybe this is a story about 2009. Maybe it's gotten better. I don't know, but it certainly seems like it's a broken system. And you know, how do you change it? I don't know. Individual responsibility, right?
Yeah, I'm sure most of you still have questions, but because due to time, we'll begin with the book signing now. But before we move on to the book signing, let me welcome our Senior Store Director to present a token of appreciation to Tom as well as Anita for today's insight.
Thank you. I just want to say myself, thank you everyone for coming. I don't take it for granted.
Make it meaningful for all those who came here today. Can you tell us something which not many people know, it's not in your book, it's not been recorded, which you think we...
I think I might have already
bolted
the stable.
You had, because you told us quite a lot of illuminating stuff, but we battled the fire for you, so just one more, John. Tell us about the A-listers, the Hollywood celebs. I mean, he had the best friends money can buy, essentially.
Yeah, let me think of a story that's not in the book.
Yeah.
I've used up all my best material in the book already. No, I was just going to tell you for this about Jho Low's. Oh yeah, let's talk about that. Okay, so just quick. Oh yeah, this is not in the book. One amazing thing that, and actually it's important we talk about it. Jho Low has run this campaign to stop the publication of this book, and he's done so by paying huge fees to UK and US based lawyers, Shillings in the UK and Cobre and Kim in New York. And thank you for reminding me. Sorry, I'm so frazzled. It's amazing to me because, you know, they've been sending letters to independent bookstores and to online retailers to say, if you carry this book, you could be subject to a defamation case, which is total BS. Because why should a bookstore be liable, right, for carrying a book? You can't be you can't face a defamation suit for carrying a book. But it was a strategy to try to stop the book getting out there, and it didn't work. The book is available. You know, Kinokuniya is carrying many copies. It's all over Malaysia. I'm going to Australia next week. It's there. We had a launch last week in the US, where it's doing really well. It went up to number 25 on the Amazon charts of all books. We were beating 100 words for babies at one point. I wish I'd written that book, man. That's been on the top 20 for like 10 years. How to Win Friends and Influence People is still in the top 50. But it is not available in the UK, which is obviously where I'm from. I hope it will be. But for now, people in the UK are... The Guardian actually reported on this legal strategy a few weeks ago. And people in the UK, and especially a lot of Malaysians in the UK, have been buying the book from Amazon US and paying the shipping fee. And it's amazing to me that people are willing to do that, because this is already expensive, right? It's like $28, you pay shipping fee, you're spending $35 on a book. Incredible. But people are doing it because they're like, screw this, we want this book, and this should not be the case. It should not be the case this book is not available, because it's, you know, everything in it is true. So, thanks for coming. First-time author, it's amazing just to have a group of people around me like this, interested in what I have to say. So, thank you, and yeah, tell your friends about it. Please leave a review on Amazon, because we haven't got enough reviews on Amazon. It's important.